In the last section, we created our first Kubernetes cluster on Google Cloud. In this section, I want to very quickly walk through this dashboard and show you a couple of interesting pieces, some different things that are going to be relevant later on as we start to actually deploy our application. The first thing I want to do is click on the multi-cluster right here that we just created. On this panel, you'll see some information about the configuration of our cluster. Now, it's not super common for you to have to come in here and reference information, but you will see some interesting stuff in here that you might need to make use of at some point in time in the future. Towards the bottom of this page, you're going to see information about the different nodes that are in use in our cluster. And so if you ever need to change the specs on the different nodes here, for example, add memory or add a more powerful CPU, you can do it from this interface here. Now, besides showing information about the cluster, you'll also notice that there's a couple of different tabs on the left-hand side. We can check out workloads right here. This is going to be a page that's going to eventually show all the different pods and deployments that belong to our application. At present, we have nothing running on our cluster, so this window is completely empty. We then have the Services tab. As you might guess, this is all about different services that we create inside of our cluster, like the cluster IP service, or a load balancer if we create one, or the node port services, all that kind of stuff. You're all going to see eventually show up on the Services tab. Now, applications right here is really talking about different kind of plugins that we can install and make use of inside of our cluster. So this is not talking about different pods or deployments that we're running. This is talking about some third-party software that might run inside of our cluster. We're not going to be making use of any third-party stuff, so we are going to generally ignore the Applications tab. The configuration is going to show all the different environment variables or secrets that we set up inside of our cluster. You'll recall that we have one secret in use right now, which stores our Postgres password. And so eventually we're going to see that secret appear on this configuration tab. And then finally, storage is going to list all of the different persistent volumes and persistent volumes claims that are set up inside of our cluster. One quick thing I want to remind you about, let me see if I have the diagram up for it. Here it is right here. All right, this is a diagram that we looked at a long time ago when we were talking about persistent volumes and persistent volume claims. You'll recall that we had said that on your local computer, we had a default provider for storage, and on your computer, Kubernetes said, okay, I'm going to take a slice of your hard drive and dedicate it to a persistent volume. That was what was happening on your computer. Remember, the entire point of that discussion was to say that the environment that Kubernetes is running in is going to assign different default classes of storage. And so we had also said that on a cloud provider, if we tell Kubernetes that we need 1 gigabyte of storage, then Kubernetes is going to try to select from one of these different services that is provided by our cloud provider. So in the case of Google Cloud, our default storage provider is called Google Cloud Persistent Disk. And in fact, if you go back over here to the Storage tab and then look at storage classes, you'll see that we have one storage class called Standard. This is our default. And if I click into it, you'll see somewhere around here, maybe not on this page so much, but definitely back on this page, you'll notice that it says GCE-PD right there. So PD stands for persistent disk. And if we Google that right now, Google Cloud Persistent Disk, yep, this is the offering from Google Cloud to reliably store some information consistently and not have it be kind of wiped away magically at some point in time. So, as we had said before, because we are now in Google Cloud, some of these default options that Kubernetes is going to use are going to be slightly different than what the defaults are on your local machine. And looking at the persistent storage is a great place to kind of get an idea of the fact that, yeah, now that we're in the cloud, things are a little bit different. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Kubernetes engine, this dashboard right here. Now we are going to come back to this dashboard several times and do a couple different things. But for right now, we're going to start to focus on adding a deployment script to our repo. That's going to be our travis.yaml file. We're going to make sure that everything is set up to automatically deploy our application off to this Kubernetes cluster as soon as we push and merge our code on the master branch of our GitHub repo. So quick pause, and we're going to start that in the next section.